Hey, all you mentees. This is the Uncanny Omar, not Fat Albert. And today I'm going to be doing an overview of all these upcoming collected editions from Marvel Comics this week. So let's get started. And welcome back, everybody. Before getting started, I want to give a huge thank you to David Gabriel and the fine folks at Marvel for sending us advance copies of all these trades. All these books are due out in the direct market and book market on July 26th or 27th, depending on where you get your books. So this is the last week of the month of July, and here are all the books coming out. The only one that I think might be pushed back until next week is the Wolverine book. I saw some of my viewers have already got a copy of this and the Avengers book, but Avengers is also due next week, the Epic Collection, so I was like, I'll just wait another week to do that one and play it safe. So keep in mind that this one might be out next week, not this week, for everybody. Now, as always, I put timestamps in the description of the video so you can jump around and check out the books you're interested in, or in case you don't want any type of spoilers. But hell, sometimes the titles spoil a little something, so nothing I can do about that. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. We'll be talking about the Iron Man Books of Korvac, Volume 3. But before I do, smash that like button, subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. Please. All that helps with our YouTube algorithm and our channel keep growing. Now let's get started. Here we have Books of Korvac 3, the Cosmic Iron Man. And boy, does Tony Stark go cosmic. So this is Christopher Cantwell Cafu still working on this book, but they're joined by other creators. You have Angel Unzueta, Ibrahim Robertson, and Julius Ota and Lan Medina also supplying some of the artwork. But you have Frank D'Armata putting it all together for the colors, and they look really spectacular. I love the fact that all the artists are just labeled as artists. They're not inkers or anything. That's pretty cool. All the covers are again supplied by Alex Ross. So this collects Iron Man 12 through 16. Keep in mind that this is the 2020 series that kicked off. And Christopher Cantwell is the main writer on the book. So this picks up where we last left off. You have Iron Man and his buddy that are back from that world that Stiltman created, sort of, in the previous volume. And he's about to be reunited with his friends. His friends of, what the heck did they call themselves? The Space Friends, I think. Or that's what Tony called them. Now, he has a rematch here with Korvac, and of course, this is the newly and improved Korvac. He's inside of a cyborg body, but it's still the mind of Michael. It's Korvac, the character, the villain from the original Korvac saga has returned, who is like a god. And here are the Space Friends. They have returned. You have Jim Hammond, Misty Knight, Gargoyle, Scarlet Spider-Man, and Frogman, and of course, Hellcat. So, all of them take on the characters like the Blizzard and the Controller, who are kind of like the cult of Korvac. But then when you have a god like Korvac coming in and trying to recruit you, what are you going to say? No? But the part about this story that is really interesting is the way that Iron Man decides to fight Korvac. So, in this particular story, he becomes, if you will, an Iron God, and I'm not going to show exactly how that plays out when he becomes this Iron God and fights Korvac. You can find out for yourself. But the problem really happens when he shows up on Earth much later. So all the Space Friends are reunited here. They're all talking about what happened up in space. And then you have the Iron God show up. And of course, this sets off all kinds of alarms. You have characters like Reed Richards and Captain America show up, representing Earth, because they didn't know exactly what was happening. Who is this guy? And it turns out it's Tony Stark. However, they sense something wrong with him. So, of course, there's a huge fight that breaks out because of miscommunication. And meanwhile, it's setting up the events of the next book. So this particular book has 184 pages. Has some beautiful artwork in here. And it retails for $29.99. Let's look at the back here for extras. So here in the back, we have some variant covers. And you also get variant covers sometimes, like in thumbnail sizes, on the opposite page of the standard edition cover. I had no idea why this cover was even here, but apparently it's an X-Gwen variant. So it's Siren, but it's Gwen Stacy. That's an awesome one. That's by Jamie McKelvey. Some of the covers have absolutely nothing to do with the story, but some of the other variants do. The thing I will say about this, I have been enjoying the hell out of Christopher Cantwell's Iron Man. I think he gets the characters right. I really enjoy the story. The problem with Christopher Cantwell's run is that as of San Diego Comic-Con, Uncanny Omar Talk Pretty One Day, Comic-Con, they announced that he is wrapping up his story. And I think it will end with the anniversary 650th issue when they go back to the original legacy number. And that really sucks because it feels like he's just been writing a story about the books of Korvac. I haven't seen him actually write any other type of story, and damn it, while this is great and I'm really enjoying it, I really wish that they had given him a chance to write other type of Iron Man stories. That's what I will say about this. So it is wrapping up. I assume we're going to have enough for one more trade paperback because the big 650th anniversary issue is going to be supersized. So, but this is Cosmic Iron Man. Next up is Donny Cates' run on Thor. This is Volume 4, God of Hammers. This collects issues 19 through 24, and the stories B and C from issue number 25, which is a big anniversary issue. There's some really cool things that happen in issue 24, though. That's also an anniversary issue. So this is the story post Jason Aaron's run. We've seen Thor return to the way that he used to look. You can find out all for yourself. Whenever I do these overviews, even when I'm talking about little spoilers, it's enough to kind of pique people's interest. I'm not going to go into detail as to what's happening unless I have to. Then I will tell you ahead of time, spoilers. But most of the stuff has already happened in the previous volumes here, and this is Volume 4. So in this particular volume, it's all about this theory that there might be a God of Hammers. We've seen Mjolnir leave Thor's side. We've seen Mjolnir pick other people to be worthy to be Thor. But nobody has ever thought of the idea that it's rejecting him because Mjolnir kind of has its own identity. And this is where it gets really interesting. So, in this particular story, it kicks off with Thor leaving Mjolnir behind on Avengers Tower, Avengers Mountain. And he's off into space to kind of become the king that he was supposed to become without the help of Mjolnir. But someone has taken Mjolnir and is going around and killing folks left and right from the 10 realms. So now Thor is going to go and recruit his father, Odin, to help him out. They have this huge argument about why he left and, of course, about the hammer and the whole myth of the hammer and this idea that there is a god of hammers out there. So this is a really interesting story. It is brutal as hell. That's one thing I noticed. Now, this isn't the only Donny Cates book that I'm going to be talking about today. I'm also going to be talking about the Hulk book. But you can see slaughter like this. You can see big fights. And you can find out for yourself who the God of Hammers is. Pretty interesting idea. The brutality in this, though, is high. The death toll is high in this particular book. I just wanted to showcase some more of this badass Nick Klein artwork because that is what really stood out to me. This is from another issue where his friends join in on this fight against this God of Hammers, if you will. And even Throg and Lockheed play a part. It's the Pet Avengers reunion. But let's talk about this particular issue right here. This is issue 24, which serves as a goodbye to a character. It's Asgard. Someone's always dying up there. But what's really cool about this is that there is all these creators from the past. You have Walter Simonson come back. He writes a little story about Beta Ray Bill. So it's really nice just to see him writing and drawing that particular story. Then you have Dan Jurgens come in and write a story about Thor during this particular time of his life. J. Michael Straczynski is joined by Olivier Coipel to tell this particular story. They're all really short, but it's just nice to see, a proper celebration by bringing in old creators. You have Al Ewing here with Lee Garbett tell a story about Loki that leads into his Defenders run. You have Jason Aaron reunited with Das Pastoras. He did a couple of fill-in issues in his run. Then you have a couple of other stories. This is the Executioner story. This one is, of course, by Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz. Love reading that. And then you have the This is Thor's Wedding. And Thor's Wedding, I believe, is written by Nadia Shamas. I'm not really familiar with her work. But I think the thing that's missing from this is Roy Thomas. I would have loved to have seen a Roy Thomas story. That would have been awesome. But, I'm sure the guy's pretty busy. So, this book retails for $19.99. It has 184 pages in it. And that is Thor by Donny Cates, Volume 4, God of Hammers. Next up is Daredevil, Woman Without Fear. Now, if you've not read any of Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil, maybe skip this one and move on to the next book, which is Hulk by Donny Cates. Because I hate to spoil anything for you, and you're probably wondering who is behind the Daredevil costume. By the way, I love that Chris Bacalo artwork. It is freaking phenomenal. Alright, but if you've read Chip Zdarsky's run, you know what's going on. I'm going to go ahead and explain what this is. Because this isn't collected in the Daredevil trades that are going on right now. Follow the Adventures of Daredevil. They do make it easier for you to follow it these days. But this is the story of Elektra. And now she is donning Daredevil's costume. She made him a solid. And this is after the big events of Devil's Reign #1, where she meets up with Kingpin and he reveals all these secrets that could forever change everyone's life. She goes back to Matt, and of course they have a wonderful night together, and then she starts reminiscing about her training with Stick, her return to Columbia University, where she ends up meeting some guy named Goldie. It's somebody that she used to go to school with. He's now a DA, but he's not the only person that she meets back up with. There's this character that keeps showing up. She doesn't know if it's real, if this person is really there, or if it's all a part of her imagination. So she has flashbacks to this character, and this character's name is Akka. She's part of the Hand. And that's what this is, really. It's kind of like, it's a side story. I guess if this was a manga, this would be known as a Gaiden. But it's a side story featuring Elektra during the Devil's Reign issues. So I think it's really cool. The important thing I will say is, do not read this until you've read all of Devil's Reign. Because while it fits in after Devil's Reign 1, they do spoil something that happens in Devil's Reign #5. And the reason I know that is because I read this and I haven't read Devil's Reign #5, and I was like, what the hell? When did that happen? So apparently it happens in Devil's Reign #5. I'm not going to talk about what, but something was spoiled, so maybe read this after reading the Devil's Reign trade. Here we have the fight with Kraven the Hunter. So it is a 3-issue miniseries. It's called Daredevil, Woman Without Fear. Rafael de la Torre does the phenomenal artwork in here. And now this Elektra is different. This is Daredevil Elektra. She's sworn not to kill. So it's really cool to see her fight off against Kraven the Hunter and hold back. Because as you all remember, Elektra's an assassin. So now she's learning to hold back because she made Matt a promise. Now, Matt does mention something here about his brother Mike Murdock. And if you haven't read Daredevil for a while, that gets a little bit confusing. Because Mike Murdock was somebody that Matt made up to be his twin brother so he can have a dual identity. That was in the past. Now we fast forward to Chip Zdarsky's run, and Mike Murdock is a real person. Now there is a reason why, and you can find out why by reading Chip Zdarsky's run. How all that happened, I thought it was pretty interesting. But the coolest thing about this, let's get back here, is you get Elektra 100. So you have Woman Without Fear 1, 2, and 3, and then Elektra 100. If you're wondering how they got to the 100th issue with all these mini-series and all these canceled ongoing series, they show you in the back. But the most exciting thing about this is that it's Ann Nocenti writing this story. Joined by Sid Kotian as the artist. And it's the character that she created, Typhoid Mary, but now getting to fight against Elektra, and maybe both of them having some kind of connection in the past. Keep in mind, Elektra wasn't around when Ann Nocenti was writing Daredevil. It wasn't until, actually, right after her run was over that they decided to bring back Elektra from the dead. Because at that time, she was dead. Even though most of us that had read Elektra Lives Again probably knew better. But anyway, that story here is featured in Elektra 100. Then you have, this is Declan Shalvey, I think is the artist in this. Oh no, he's the writer in this particular story. It's just a date night for Matt and Elektra. Then you have all these little stories back here, the mini Marvels. But this is the Elektra 100 cover gallery. So this is how you get to issue number 100. And somebody's keeping count because, yeah, it is 100th issues. Or 100 issues, not 100th issue. But here are the variant covers for Elektra and The Woman Without Fear. All the way in the back. I love that one right there by Jorge Fornes. That one's awesome too. Simple, but I like that one. Nice. Now, this one's $15.99, and it has 120 pages. And for all you spine watchers out there, here's what all of the spines look like for the books coming out this week. And this is also where I remind people to smash that like button and subscribe. Ring that bell for notifications. We are on Patreon and Spreadshop too. It's a phenomenal way to support the channel. All those links are in the description of the video. Or you can just put me on mute, pause this particular part, and then let's move on to the next book. Hulk Smashtronaut. Of course, it's a take on Astronaut. So this is after the Al Ewing run on The Incredible Hulk. And we have now the team of Donny Cates and Ryan Ottley teaming up on this. So we've seen this before. I remember when John Byrne was writing and drawing Alpha Flight, and Bill Mantlo and Mike Mignola were working on the Hulk. They switched, right? Like one went over to the Hulk, and one went over to Alpha Flight. This was the case here. Al Ewing was working on the Hulk. He went over to Venom. Donny Cates was working on Venom. Went over to the Hulk. So I will say this is a case of where you don't need to have read The Immortal Hulk to understand what is going on. As a matter of fact, you're going to be completely confused, and that's okay. So I am going to talk a little bit about this. It's a tiny little bit of spoilers to kind of set the story up, because it's pretty interesting what they decide to do with the Hulk in this, especially after reading Immortal Hulk and Al Ewing introducing all these mythos about the Devil Hulk and all that. But believe me, you'll get to read that sometime if you haven't yet. But we start off with the Hulk in front of this door and trying to do what the Hulk does best. Smash it. He's in the middle of nowhere, and he's just trying to smash this door, making his own knuckles bleed. And on the other side of the door is Bruce Banner. And apparently Bruce Banner has locked the Hulk in there. And Betty Ross comes in, and she's like, you can't keep him in there. And this is kind of torture because he's a child. And Bruce is like, look, I've come to realize that the Hulk is going to be immortal. He's going to get to live. But one day, Bruce Banner is going to die, and then the monster will take over. I need to make most of it what I can, most of this life. I never wanted to be a defender. I never wanted to be a superhero. I never wanted to be an Avenger. I wanted to be a scientist. So, on top of this, you get the narration of what you find out later is Doctor Strange, where he talks about this theory that the creature was not there to protect Bruce Banner, not unleashed because of the childhood trauma that he received from his father, but really the creature was there to protect us, the human world, from what Bruce Banner would become. And it's a horrible thought. I don't know why I didn't say it before. I found that really interesting considering how many times they've dealt with the Hulk and Doctor Strange just keeping this idea to himself, this theory. He was like, I didn't want to say it just in case. It's too horrifying to think about. Sure. Nice. Now, I think Spider-Man speaks for most of us because, hey, real quick, is anyone else very confused? That's exactly how you feel when you read, like, the first few pages. Okay, so the Hulk and Bruce Banner are separated. Interesting. But then they talk about how the Hulk is out there trying to steal this material from one of the Iron Man stations in Mount Wingard. So he's out there, and he's made himself into a starship. What? So who's controlling the Hulk? And it seems like that Bruce Banner is piloting the Hulk. Alright, so pretty much what's going on is that there was an event in El Paso. Now, that did not happen in Al Ewing's run. They keep talking about this event. Actually, if you read this trade paperback, it is revealed what happens in El Paso, I think in issue 5 or 6. But after this event that was so horrifying, Bruce Banner decided that he needed to seek out help. And somehow he split his psyche into 3 different parts. So this is pretty interesting. You have the body, which is the Incredible Hulk. That's what you see here. That he is making into a starship. He's making into some kind of vessel to go into outer space to get the hell out of Earth. because he's afraid of what will become of him, what Earth will think of Bruce Banner, and what he will do to Earth. Not what the Hulk will do to Earth, but what Bruce Banner will. So he's in charge of controlling the spaceship. He's in charge of controlling the Hulk. Now, this is, of course, all in his mind palace, right? But he was able to split this psyche up into 3. The third, and the most important part, is the monster psyche. It's the mind of the monster. Where is that? Well, that's behind this door. And the body, the Hulk becomes stronger when he's angrier. So Bruce Banner, in his own mind palace, trapped the Hulk, the monster psyche, in there with him, and he keeps just throwing things at him to get him enraged, to get him to fight, to get him to go off, so that the body is fueled by that. It's pretty interesting how he did that. I thought that was not really unique, because we've kind of seen things like that before, but to make Hulk into a starship, that was interesting. So what the Hulk turns out to be doing in the first issue is going after Tony Stark's secret project called Project Ark. And it's something that's going to get him to travel through different dimensions. And Tony's like, no, you can't do it. Don't go through that. You don't know if you'll die. You don't know if you'll ever be able to come back. And Bruce Banner's like, well, I'm sorry, the Hulk's body is... Bruce Banner speaking through the Hulk's body. He's saying, whatever. You always wanted to get rid of me, and now I'm leaving. So that's pretty much what this is. He goes through another dimension. As a matter of fact, the first people he meets are these people right here. This is the alternate universe time hazard operation response and intervention team. Well, it started with a Y. Now, if you're a fan of the Wildstorm universe, but it's been collected in the DC Omnibus editions and Absolutes. And speaking of Absolutes, that is the Authority right there. It's the very first, I think, Absolute edition, the Absolute Authority. It's not them, but it's obviously a take on those characters, the Authority. As a matter of fact, that's what that stands for. So, that was pretty interesting. I thought it was pretty tongue-in-cheek. And then the Starship Hulk just blasts through them. And that's the kind of artwork you're going to see in here. You're going to see the return of the original Wolverine when he first appeared in the pages of Hulk 181. And you're going to see him fight the Hulk, the psyche of the creature, so he can keep fueling that spaceship. You'll see some characters show up here from alternate dimensions. This was crazy, and I think the more I read it, the more I got into it. I wasn't digging it at first, I'll be honest. When I was reading this, some of my viewers were asking me if I had read it yet, and I finally got around to reading it, I think a couple of weeks ago, and I wasn't digging it. And I'm like, I've been there, done that. Oh, he's a spaceship. Cool artwork, and I guess in a way, every issue can have some kind of action sequence because you have the creature fueling the starship. But the more I read it, the more I dug it, and I saw the possibilities of where they could go with this. So I thought it turned out pretty cool, honestly. So Donny Cates and Ryan Otley, yeah, they kind of knocked it out of the park with this one. At first, a little bit of a slow, confusing burn, but I think the more I read it, the more I understood where I think this is going to go. Now, the only thing I will say before reading this, maybe check out his run on Venom, because there are aspects of that in this particular run right here. But you don't need to have read... Here, let's look at the extras. You don't need to have read any of the Immortal Hulk to enjoy this. You know what? That's all I'm going to show as far as the extras, because the rest are kind of spoilers. But this is Smashtronaut. This one has 160 pages and retails for $17.99. It's finally here, Avengers by Jonathan Hickman, Volume 5. This is the complete collection. And this is it. This wraps up his run on the Avengers, collecting Avengers 35 through 44 and New Avengers 24 through 33. This, again, being the 2012 Avengers. This has been collected before in omnibus format, oversized hardcover format, trade paperbacks, and now in complete collection, completely collected. Yes, that's what I meant to say. The book has 528 pages and retails for $44.99. Now, he is joined by all these wonderful, talented people right here. Jim Chung, Paco Medina, Nick Bradshaw, Dustin Weaver. Actually, the gentleman that ends up drawing a lot of the New Avengers is Kev Walker right there. Mike Deodato Jr., Mike Mayhew. Just to name some of the creators that he worked with. So, This is where it gets a little confusing. This is when I was thinking, oh, I think I missed something. And some of you will too, but there is a little bit of a time jump. We go to 8 months later after the events of Volume 4, where we find out a lot of betrayals were happening, especially within the new Avengers group. So now, this is 8 months into the future, and we see Sam and Robert Thor right there, hanging out in outer space. Sam is now with this character known as Smasher. They're together, and they have a baby. Now, that's when I was like, what? They have a baby? Cannonball has a baby? Okay, interesting. We see how other Avengers are scattered throughout the world, helping each other out. This is the S.H.I.E.L.D. station Golgotha, where you have Amadeus Cho break in and try to get something. Now, you know Amadeus Cho is a good guy, so why is he breaking in? And why are the Avengers fighting each other? Everything is explained. Jonathan Hickman has been playing the long game. We get to see the group of the Illuminati that hired Amadeus Cho to break in and get a piece of something important that plays a big role later on. And here's your Illuminati right here, including the Cabal, which is very important. So you have people like Maximus now, and Thanos, and Black Swan, and Namor. Doctor Doom, of course, also, much like Jonathan Hickman, playing the long game. So, I'm not going to say much about this because I want people to be just surprised when things in here happen. There is a kick-ass moment, though, that I have to talk about. Probably one of the greatest moments in the entirety of Jonathan Hickman's run, and that is the team-up between Thor and Hyperion. At all odds. Oh my gosh, it's so badass. Here, let me get to it. Alright, so this is after the death of some of their teammates, and the last men standing are just Thor and Hyperion. Every Avenger has their own role to play in this particular story, but I love how both of them handled this. I love that when this oncoming doom is just facing them and slaughtering universes, they decide to stand up and fight back. Oh, it's so badass. It's such an awesome moment, and they were out of beer. They had drank all the beer already. So, I love the chemistry between both of these characters. I thought this moment was so freaking awesome. It's one of my favorite. There's another moment in here that I can't reveal, but I didn't see it coming. I thought it was so badass. But this one right here, oh hell yes. That one is one of my top favorite Avengers moment of all times. Now, as far as the extras, because as we know, Jonathan Hickman always puts the covers in the back. I say that like he builds the books himself, but he does strongly suggest that they put all the covers in the back so the readers feel like they're reading one long book and experiencing one big thing instead of breaking it up into mini chapters. I kind of dig that. I will say, if you are waiting for this book to wrap up everything so you can find out exactly what's happening, you're going to be disappointed because this doesn't really wrap up. As a matter of fact, it gets a little bit confusing towards the end, and then you go and read Secret Wars. Because when I said that Jonathan Hickman is playing the long game, I meant that he's playing the long game since the days of Secret Warriors and S.H.I.E.L.D., Architects of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Fantastic Four, and Ultimates, and this. So, you don't need to have read all that stuff. Just read this and Leeds and Secret Wars. You'll get the full gist of the story. But I tell you what I was told to read that did help, and that was Avengers World. I didn't know at the time. So there was another series going on called Avengers World that really would have helped me because that's what the Avengers established at the ending of the last volume. It's this Avengers World, this idea that the Avengers are scattered all over the world and helping people out. Because there are things that are done there that affect the characters in this particular book. So that's about the only thing I wish I had known. But I did go back and read it after that. This was when I first read it a few years back. And then, of course, we did an old reader, new reader on this years ago. But this is Avengers by Jonathan Hickman. Complete Collection, Volume 5. I believe I already said it's 528 pages and $44.99. Poor Tony Stark in this. That's all I will say about that. Last but certainly not least is Wolverine Epic Collection. And this is Volume 9, 1996 to 1997. Otherwise known as the era where I stopped reading comics. So, this is... It's nostalgia, but in a very weird way, because I remember exactly where I was when I was reading these stories. I remember the moment that I said, okay, yeah, I think I'm done with comics for now. And it was for now. At the time, I was like, I think I'm done with comics forever. But this kicks off with Uncanny X-Men 332, which of course is the big prelude to the Onslaught story arc that they're building up. It also collects Wolverine 101 and 109. It does have 102.5, Wolverine 96 in here, which is what the annuals were known as. Venom, Tooth, and Claw, which is what this is known as, the Epic Collection 1, 2, and 3. And then you have both Logan's one-shots in here, The Path of the Warlord and Shadow Society #1. The book has 496 pages and retails for $44.99. So you have the story that kicks off here with Uncanny X-Men 332. It's the story of Ozymandias, and that leads into the big fight in issue 101. Drawn, I believe this one is drawn by Val Semaix, who had drawn Conan in the past. He's no stranger to comics. Now, if you're wondering why the hell Wolverine looks like a troll and ogre, well, that's because of the 100th issue. You see, in the 100th issue, how do I explain this? I'm not going to spoil who, but there was a villain that's related to a character. This is where it gets awesome and confusing with timelines and family lines. But that character, this villain, wanted to put the adamantium back into Wolverine. Wolverine had lost his adamantium in Wolverine 75 because of Magneto during the Fatal Attractions crossover, but his body rejected the adamantium, and when he came out, because of comic book science, he looked like a troll. Big bushy eyebrows, no nose. The no nose is what? His hair was shaved, and he had hair on his arms like this, so he became more like a feral Wolverine than anything. And I think that was one of the big moments that I had that I was like, I think I'm done. Here we have Adam Kubert's final issue, by the way, because Adam Kubert, after this, ends up leaving the book. So the person that's going to bring his humanity back, I did like that aspect. I think I appreciated it more when I came back and reread these issues. The person that is going to bring Wolverine's humanity back is this lady right here, Elektra. So Elektra kind of mentors Wolverine, get him out of this animal state, and trains him to be the samurai that he was born to be. It's pretty cool where they're both climbing up of the World Trade Center. But this is what he looks like for a while. Now, different artists, of course, interpret him differently. Like, by the end of this volume, he is going to start looking more and more like himself, I will say that. There is a crossover with Onslaught, and the big crossover with Onslaught here, the event tie-in, or I think it's called Face. Sorry, it's called Impact. It does reveal something very important about the character of Onslaught. So, after hanging out with Elektra for a few issues, he is regaining some of his humanity back and starting to look a little more human. His arms are getting back into shape. This is where some of the covers are collected, of course, on the opposite side of the standard edition covers. As a matter of fact, when we get to Wolverine 96, the way that Ed McGuinness draws him doesn't really look like the ogre at the beginning. He's looking more like himself. He's a little more buff, a little more stout. Just happens to have hair on his arms like that. This is one of the earliest Ed McGuinness issues I remember, or artwork that I saw by Ed McGuinness before he took over the run of Deadpool. This is the introduction of the Red Ronin, and of course has Wolverine reuniting with a lot of the characters from Japan that he's met throughout the years. Then we get to these really cool stories. Then there's a backup story back here by actually Joe Kelly, the person that ended up writing the Deadpool story I was talking about with Ed McGuinness on artwork. There's the Wolverine Wizard Magazine tribute. And some more Wolverine art back here. By now, Anthony Wynn is the new penciler. And Anthony Wynn's artwork, I can see why they hired him. This is at the time when Image Comics was the hottest thing. People were leaving the big two to go and buy Image Comics. So he has a very similar style to that of Mark Silvestri. A little bit of Adam Kubert. So I can kind of see why they decided to hire him. This is the Tooth and Claw story arc. Which, Tooth and Claw, I wish they had picked this particular cover right here. I think this was the cover they had for the solicitations at first. I actually dig that cover. I'm not the biggest fan of the artist. This is Joe St. Pierre. This is a story written by Larry Hama, who did some Venom miniseries. But they went with the cover to issue number 3 in there. I think that's issue number 3 or 2. But I like that cover to issue number 1. Very different art style, very cartoony. And it's all about interdimensions and Wolverine having a team up with Eddie Brock there. And it's a 3-issue miniseries. Then we get to these really awesome one-shots. I really enjoy them. People hate on Howard Mackie. But Howard Mackie did a lot of kick-ass stuff. I mean, he wrote Ghost Rider. He did these 2 particular stories here. He did Mutant X. I think people just remember him for his, like, what was it called? The Brotherhood stories. The not-so-good era of Spider-Man. It sucks, right? Like, when people remember you for the bad things that you did, not the great work that you've done. Like, I'm a huge fan of Mark Gruenwald. That is my Captain America growing up. So, when people say, oh yeah, Captain America by Mark Gruenwald, yeah, Capwolf, right? really, really stupid story. What the hell? No. Like, Capwolf was like towards the end of his run. He wrote Captain America for 10 years and that's all you can remember him for? One of my pet peeves, I swear. But this story is all set up before Weapon X, before the X-Men, and that's Logan, Path of the Warlord. Of course, all of it taking place mostly in Japan. And then the story that I really enjoyed, and that was basically because of the artwork, is this one back here. This is Logan's Shadow Society. I thought the artwork by Tom Cocker and Keith Aiken was just freaking awesome. I love the art style in this. It's very similar to that of, like, I don't know, Mark Buckingham maybe, a little bit. Just the way that they draw. This all takes place again in the past. It's Carol Danvers teaming up with Logan in this particular story to find out who is murdering these members of their old team. And speaking of Mark Buckingham, I forgot to mention that issue 10... Wait, let me see if I can find it really quick. Yeah, 102.5 is here, but it's collected after issue 103 because they didn't want to break that story arc where he's with Elektra. But this one is written by Dan Slott and Mark Buckingham. This one's dedicated to Mark Gruenwald, speaking of Mark Gruenwald. But it's just a quick little story about Wolverine. But drawn by Mark Buckingham, and his art style looking a lot different than what I've come to know Mark Buckingham for, which is, of course, Death and Fables. So it's a little bit different than that. Let's look at the extras here in the back. So you have the cover to Marvel Visions right here, number 11, the history of Wolverine. And as you saw, there were some covers in between the chapters there, too. Interview with Adam Kubert and gang. This is really cool. This is pages 9 and 11 combined from the Wolverine 96, Annual 96, the Marvel Swimsuit Special number 4 by Salvador La Roca. The book has 496 pages, retails for $44.99. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing any of these books, don't forget to check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content and page count of each of these collected editions. Let me know in the comments down below which ones you're picking up for your collection. Again, this was the Uncanny Omar. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. And more importantly, everyone, stay healthy, stay safe, and much love.